Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. There are certain rules in the NFL rulebook that are not up for interpretation. They're concrete and set in stone, and the referee cannot change them at his or her discretion. One of those is Rule 4, Section 1, Article 3, which talks about halftime. The rule is simple. Between the second quarter and the third quarter, there's a 13-minute halftime break. With the exception of the Super Bowl, where the halftime break is 30 minutes long, this 13-minute halftime is the norm for every single game. And it's been this way since 1990, when the league decided to cut the break by a few minutes from when it used to be 15 minutes. But there was one game where halftime was way shorter than expected. There was one game where the network broadcasting it couldn't get through their usual halftime show because they were significantly short on time. There was one game where the teams didn't even bother going back to the locker room, and instead stayed on the field. Because in a 1998 game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Kansas City Chiefs, the halftime break was cut in half to just 6 minutes long. And this is the story behind the shortest halftime in NFL history. Before I talk about what caused the halftime break to be that short, we need some context going into the game. It's October 4th, 1998, and the Kansas City Chiefs are hosting the Seattle Seahawks in what looks like a huge matchup in the AFC West. The Chiefs and Seahawks enter this game as two of the best teams in the conference. Both teams sit at 3-1. Both teams have some of the top offenses in the AFC, with Seattle in second with 105 points scored, and Kansas City in fourth with 91. Both teams have some of the top defenses in the conference as well, with Seattle in second with 41 points allowed, and Kansas City in fifth with 57. And this was a Sunday Night Football game, being shown in front of a nationally televised audience on ESPN. The whole football world was tuned in to see who would win this battle and keep pace with the Denver Broncos, who were the defending champions and led the AFC West with a 5-0 record. Whoever loses this game is going to have some serious work to claw their way back into the division title race, since it didn't look like Denver was going to be slowing down anytime soon. It was apparent right from the onset that this was no ordinary Sunday Night Football game. The weather was going to play a critical part in this one. October 4th produced one of the worst flash floods in Kansas City history. You had hail that was the size of a quarter. You had wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour. You had over $50 million worth in damages around the city. And unfortunately, you had 11 people die along the creeks. The National Weather Service noted that this was the second deadliest flash flood in the history of the city, and that the only one worse was all the way back in 1977, when 29 people died and over $100 million in damages occurred. And during the worst of it, which took place during this game, you had 4.5 inches of rainfall over a 75-minute period, with some reports indicating that it may have been somewhere closer to 6 inches. The fact that they even played this game to begin with is somewhat remarkable. While the game started off, as the teams, the fans, and the league officials would soon find out, it would be almost impossible to finish it in one straight shot. Early on, the game seemed like your typical bad weather rain game. On Seattle's opening drive of the game, they were able to take an early 3-0 lead following a 22-yard field goal by Todd Peterson. That's when you could tell that things were about to get really chaotic. When Peterson tried kicking it off, the ball fell off the tee due to the high winds. As he put it back to attempt another kickoff, this happened.
Now with these weather conditions, they don't have a lot of choice.
I still think you have to pick and choose where and when you want to throw the football.
And we just had a major lightning flash over the top of Arrowhead Stadium.
Lightning was nearby. Now, while the leagues will play games in all sorts of bad weather, the league won't play games in lightning because of the safety risks that it poses, although that wasn't always the case. If you want to learn more about the time in a 1980 game between the Bengals and Buccaneers, that the league actually played a game in a thunderstorm where lightning nearly hit the stadium, then click the card in the upper right corner. But the league determined that lightning wasn't in the general vicinity of Arrowhead Stadium, so play continued. What followed over the next quarter was a bad weather game unlike anything else. You could visibly see the rain on the camera. You could see the field turn into just a giant mud puddle. Pete Stoyanovich hit a 22-yard field goal to tie the game at 3 apiece, and even he had trouble keeping his footing. I have no idea how he cleared this with ease, seeing as he completely slipped and had no follow-through whatsoever. But either way, the conditions were only going to get worse before they got better. By the end of the first quarter, the announcers said that they were having trouble seeing the opposite side of the stadium. The field didn't even look like a field anymore. It just looked like a giant puddle. Anytime anyone moved their feet, water would come splashing up, as the water was almost ankle high by this point. The announcers were calling the field conditions deplorable, and the quality of the game was ridiculously sloppy, with drop passes, muff punts, and turnovers galore. By the end of the game, there would be 9 turnovers in total. Finally, midway through the second quarter, with 7:10 left, referee Phil Luckett stopped the play. Lightning was getting closer, and at this point, continuing to play the game outdoors would have posed a huge safety threat to both the players and the fans inside of Arrowhead Stadium. The game was delayed for 54 minutes, with everyone going inside while the nearby Lightning passed and the conditions improved. Play eventually resumed, and at the end of the first half, the Chiefs were leading at 10-3, and the referee ended the first half with this bizarre announcement.
That is the end of the half. We'll have a shortened halftime of 6 minutes.
That raises the question, why was halftime just 6 minutes? Doesn't that break the rules? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, there were reports that an hour after the first storm subsided, that another storm was going to come in. The last thing that anyone wanted was to have the possibility of a second delay. It's not good for the players, it's not good for the fans who would have to drive back super early on Monday morning in awful weather conditions, and it's not good for ESPN, who is televising the game. Remember, this was a nationally televised game. You don't want the end of the game to take place ridiculously late to the point where most of the country is asleep. And since there was a delay midway through the second quarter that was close to an hour, which gave players some breathing room and coaches time to adjust and game plan going forward, that was sort of their halftime. So out of an abundance of caution, not wanting to risk the possibility of another delay, and not wanting to risk the safety of everyone involved, we saw something almost unprecedented. We saw a 6-minute halftime break. None of the players went to the locker room. Both teams stayed on the field and did what they had to do there.
Well, the problem is that there is still a front out there, and it's got a lot of lightning, and we want to get the game in if we can, but obviously the safety of our players and fans comes first. Right now, it's clear we're going to go ahead and play. We just talked about an abbreviated halftime to see if we can get this game in, because National Football League would like to get the game played, obviously.
And to the league's credit, they were able to finish the game and beat the second storm. The second half was not as bad from a weather perspective, though the field had already taken quite a beating. Kansas City wound up taking the game 17-6, with the Chiefs striking once more in the third quarter on an 80-yard touchdown pass from Rich Gannon to Andre Rison. A 6-minute halftime break is awfully short. You don't have time to make too many adjustments. You don't have time to dry off or change if you have to. You don't have time to even go to your locker room, as the walk there and the walk back already takes up half of that 6-minute stretch. Yet that's exactly what happened in 1998. Even though nothing in the rulebook really gives the referee the power to adjust the length of a halftime break, nearly a quarter century ago, we saw Phil Luckett and his crew do just that. And considering the circumstances, I think it turned out to be the right decision. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JarGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.